Hello and welcome to the GreaterStl Sports Podcast on the all-new SG4L Media Network. Robert Bolsley here with you. You can tweet the podcast at GSTLSP. You can tweet the network at SG4LMN1. You can also find us on Instagram at GreaterSTLSP. And you can find us anywhere, Facebook, YouTube, and anywhere you can find podcasts at GreaterStl Sports Podcast. Now I'm feeling a little under the weather. That's why we're a little late on the podcast. I feel like it's just another complaint. Yeah, who knows? Another complaint from me. But I felt a little better today. Felt like I could get a podcast in. And I feel like with everything going on in baseball, there's just so much to talk about. Like, I could spend like 14 hours on a baseball podcast. I literally feel like I could do that. And I'm kind of mad that I kind of doubted myself there for a second. On the last podcast when I said, when I was worried about them canceling games, it was like, oh no, like, this might be a little later than I thought. Now, I still had some optimism. I still was saying this very easily. I could see them playing 154, whatever, working around, getting extra playoff games in, blah, blah, blah. And of course, they got a deal done. And somehow, miraculously, if I even said that right, they're going to play 162. And I'm really surprised that the players agreed to that because there's 20, I think it was 22 doubleheaders or 20 doubleheaders set up in there to get all the games in. And I was, the old school people, let's go play two. I don't think that, the newer players are all about that. So it's kind of funny to see that they were even going to play 162. And it's not like the money went up so much. Like, the only money that went up a whole bunch was the pre-arbitration bonus, which is basically a bonus for the younger stars to get money. And, the owner's throwing $50 million in that, which also is going to help you keep your stars. If you can pay them more money, if they're going to get more money to be where they're at, it's going to help you keep your homegrown stars. So it works out for the player, and it works out for the team. You knock your collective bargaining tax, your luxury tax, whatever you want to call it, the CBT, you move that up from 210, which was already, if you want to call it, the higher salary cap in the league. So that goes from 210 to 230. Minimum salary goes from 570 to 700. You're going to get a postseason with 12 teams. More in a league play, which basically they're just going to start knocking out games that don't mean nothing. And actually, you're actually going to get to see the New York Yankees once in a while. You're actually going to get to see the Boston Red Sox and St. Louis once in a while. Which I think works well for everybody. And now the coolest thing I thought about it was that they're going to have games at the random parks still. Like, the game that the Cardinals were supposed to have, I think, in London. The game in Iowa. The game, I think that was the Field of Dreams game, the Little League World Series game. And then I seen in there they were going to try to have some games at the two standing Negro League parks, which I thought was kind of cool. So that's probably the coolest thing to come out of all of this. But there's money involved. And you knew it was going to happen. Two sides that automatically are going to make money are going to find a way to make more money. And of course, with teams spending more money, that's going to bring revenue from the owners are paying out already to the players. And of course, now with the 12-team postseason, more teams are just going to make money out of that. So actually upping that salary cap only works in certain ways. Because you would have a team that goes out and maybe spends 130, 140 million and be in it towards the end. And then now they can spend all kinds of money because they can spend over 230 now. And I'm glad that they didn't go to 14 teams. I don't like the NHL. I don't like the NBA with the 16-team playoffs. I would have rather maybe try to find a way to have 10, but that's an uneven number. So I played 12, is the way to go. And I thought it was the way to go the whole time. I just think it's disappointing in the cities that don't spend money. I think that's kind of a disappointing thing in the St. Louis, because now you can say, hey, we made the playoffs. Hey, we made the playoffs. Hey, we made the playoffs. And I'm kind of tired of hearing that. Like when I seen the Trevor Story contract details, 6 years, 140. Which is to say that adds up to $24 million a year, which is a little less than that. Are you kidding me? After the Cardinals just lost the contract to Fowler, Carpenter, Martinez, all off the books, all gone. Are you saying that Trevor Story, who said he didn't want to play a different position, who's friends with Nolan Arenado? I mean, does he really just want to go to Boston, or was really that the best contract out there for him? And this is with a team that already has a shortstop in Bogarts. This is a team that didn't need to add a Trevor Story. The incentives on the Cardinals to play their young guys is beyond my brain power. I mean, after all this fight, and the Cardinals actually voted no on this whole thing, just so you know. And you can see why. The lower we can go, less money we got to spend. And then, hey, if we make the playoffs, we make the playoffs every year. We've been 500 for 20 years. No other team has done that. And I was making fun of all the people saying, "Oh, this is Yachty and Wainwright's year. You're going to ruin it." Because I knew baseball was going to happen. Oh, you're losing the twilight years of a Goldschmidt and Arenado. This is getting wasted by the MLB. No, this is where you're wrong. It's getting wasted by the Cardinals. And now you see Flaherty and Reyes go down. You really didn't have the starting pitching for Flaherty to go down. And you were hoping that you could get something out of Reyes from the rotation. You hear Jordan Hicks' name come up here and there. An injured player, by the way. And then your best bet now is to go out here and get some guys from the Japanese. I mean, you can't name one reliable option out of the four spots you got open behind Wainwright. Definitely with Flaherty at. Like, oh, what if you get a 2019 Steven Matz? And these are these are things the Cardinals are hoping for that they don't get. Is a 2019 Steven Matz or 2020 Steven Matz? Excuse me. Hoping they get a 2018 Miles Michaelis. Hoping Dakota's back to full strength. Hoping they get a 40-year-old pitcher to pitch like he's a Cy Young Award winner. That doesn't sound smart to me. And the guys that got Drew Van Hagen and Aaron Brooks and Nick Wigren, which the first two are starters, but I mean, those are proven major league guys. I mean, it's great that you went and got Michaelis and some of these pitchers that go over and across to Japan and South Korea come back and pitch better after they've had some more, after they got some more working somewhere else. But Van Hagen, 10 and 10, 571, and 127, or excuse me, 10 and 10, 571, and 199 innings in the major leagues. I mean, he was 13 and 14 with a 351 in Japan. Aaron Brooks, who, I mean, 9 and 13, 649 and 170 innings in the major leagues. 14 and 9, 279, in 229 innings in the KBO. And you don't even hear talk about him. And these are your starters, people. This is what you got. You got Wainwright and a bunch of nobodies. And you didn't go help him offensively. The Cardinals are almost wasting a division title here. I mean, Chicago's trying to beat themselves up, and don't sleep on the Cubs. The team that I thought was good, that you thought that might have had a chance to be down there with Pittsburgh. I mean, they've gone out and got Stroman. They had Hendricks. Don't sleep on Wade Miley. They went and got the new Japanese guy. They got Patrick Wisdom, if Patrick Wisdom can produce 2 years in a row. They got Frank Swindle. I mean, Jason Hayward has been a productive player before. I mean, he hasn't been the best offensive player, but that's a defense for you. It has proven to be productive at times. I mean, and then you got the Brewers in transition mode. You got the Reds in transition mode. The Pirates are another team, but if they can get some pitching, if they can get their pitching to go right, I mean, this is going to be the cakewalk that you thought it was going to be. I mean, it's not one team that can win this division. On paper, right now, it looks like that the Cardinals are the one team that can win this division. But to add $23 million to your payroll and almost make it, without a doubt, the Cardinals winning this division. The Cardinals have done nothing. And all you heard about was, we need a fifth starter. We need a fifth starter. We went to Japan for it. I mean, at this point, you're looking at reclamation projects or old guys hoping to get a second chance. A Julio Teheran, a Chris Archer. That's all that's left. A Brent Anderson, who I really like, but you look at his stats, and it's, of course, a guy I like. So his stats ain't the greatest in the world, but it's better than what you got now. Ncaa wouldn't bother me on this roster. And when you came in and you looked at it, and you've seen that most of the 2 of the 3 good top teams in your division are in transition mode. The Pirates are the Pirates. I don't get it. But it's not like the Brewers are giving up. They wouldn't sign McCutchen. They still have Woodruff. They still have a team that they can put a squad out there and go out and get this division. And the Cardinals are just wasting it. Just wasting the chance to take this over when they can. I'm at a total loss for words. It's no doubt that the Cardinals were one of the 4 teams, and it's proven. But you didn't have to tell me that. You didn't have to show me anything written on it. I could have told you when they said 4 teams to decline the CBA. I could have told you it was the Cardinals. They're going to lose money on it. Well, they're not going to lose money, but they're not going to gain as much money as they've been gaining before. And that just ain't the Cardinal way. The Cardinal way thing. I'm so tired of hearing about it. The Cardinal way. Win baseball games. We can say that it ain't this like little fun 2D fun thing anymore. But let's write this little book. It's all you're one of the teams that wanted to go after the sabermetrics and all this other crap. This is how you picked Michaelis over Lynn. That looks real smart now. It looked smart 3-4 years ago. It doesn't look too bright now. For a pitcher that's getting paid like $14 million a year. You want who's getting paid more than that? Michaelis. I just don't understand the Cardinals and their contracts. It makes zero sense to me. I can understand wanting a homegrown talent. And that's how it's always been. And the fans always fall in love with that. And it's great when a guy is good, you can keep him here. But of how much wasted money this team has thrown away. And I can understand being leery on pitchers. I can't understand being leery on Trevor Story. I mean, you would have got Corey Dickerson is going to be your DH. That's your plan as of right now. Now, I don't know about the whole Auburn thing and whatever. We can get. I mean, that you got a guy that's just a player that can't hit right hand. So now you put yourself in a rock and a hard place there. Now, I like the Dickerson signing because he is a left-hander, and that's what you need right now. But he's like, oh, I'm not going to change my approach. Oh, I'm not going to do this. Because it's going to bring some power back. But the power has been gone since 2017. I trust Halbert at DH more than I trust Corey Dickerson. And we can go with the Lars Newbar thing. And great, another homegrown, unproven talent. And look, we got Yepis coming up, and they're not here. This is what you had a proven thing. Yepis is not going to block Story from anything. The only person he's blocking in a situation, to my knowledge, is Edmund Sosa. If you go away on DeYoung. But you already knew because about, I don't know, last week sometime as they said, oh, we told DeYoung going into the season, he's our starting shortstop. And that should just deflate your sales right there. And I'm not saying they don't go out here and make enough. Because you did get Noah Nato. You did get Story. You have kept Flaherty around. But after that, who have you got? I mean, you've missed on everybody else. Cecil, Fowler. And I don't think Fowler was as bad a signing as people would say. You can look at his stats and they were average Doug Fowler stats. You just had to overpay to get what you could get at that time. Andrew Miller wasn't the best signing. But when you can go out and take a division and guarantee yourself a top spot in the playoffs, I don't care how many teams get it. The Cardinals cost themselves an easy roll here. Over $23 million. Now and everybody says, well, what happens when Xander Bogaerts opts out of his contract in Boston? Well, then their story can go right back to short right there. And who guarantees they don't move Bogaerts around? I mean, and that's the thing here, is the team that went and got Story is a team that didn't need Trevor Story. That didn't really have an open spot for him, but they're going to find one. And when you're a team like the Cardinals, they had an open spot for him. Whether you think DeYoung can be this or not, you still have an open spot at DH for either one of them. The Corey Dickerson, Lance Newbar thing doesn't excite me at all. Not one bit. And that's what I don't get. We just think if we can do it with these homegrown, we can do it this one year. Well, we can do it the next year. I mean, it took you 17 wins in a row last year to get in the playoffs. And you didn't make the first wild card. And I understand a 100-win team won the first wild card. You had no chance. But you want to be in that situation again, whether it is 2 to 3 games? So now we got a 2 to 3 game chance. And if you lose Flaherty for the rest of the season, who's your second and third game pitcher? I just want to know where this analytic department came from. just want to know where this philosophy came from. I don't know, look what we did with the Ozzie and Willies in the back of the day. Great. I'm glad. I'm glad that was back in the day when it could happen. When it was a whole different league. When your team was a whole different structure. I mean, Paul DeYoung's a great defensive shortstop, but he's not out there playing the Ozzie Smith shortstop. And you got the 5 good lovers, and that's great. And also, you provide a defense around your pitching staff, but you have to score runs. I mean, what if Bader becomes the Bader the first half of it? What happens then? What if DeYoung is DeYoung? Your backup's Corey Dickerson and Lars Newborn. That's not exciting to me. Definitely when you could have went and got a left-handed bat in a Schwarber, who's a pretty good defensive outfielder. And maybe not the best at running balls down, but he's got a strong arm. He's going to keep people honest. And you're still going to have playing time for Carlson and Bader and Newbar, all in that situation. You put them in spots where they're going to hit better. You'll probably see Newbar against the righties and a little more in there, switching out for Carlson and Bader if you had a guy like Schwarber. You don't have to make that decision now. Now they can all play. Yay! We can get everybody that we think we can build up and be the greatest talent in the world. Good for us. Look at us. Look at our paper roster. And that's what they have right now. It's a paper roster. That's what looks good. A lot of things look good on paper. The 2004 team looked really good on paper. But they lost the World Series. Nah, it's going at a 100-win team. But there's not a team in a few years that I've looked at from the St. Louis Cardinals and said, hey, that's a World Series winner. Because of the situations you put in with the health of this club. With the Flaherty's, with the Reyes's, to Jordan Hicks's, Dakota Hudson, Miles Michaelis. Let me name the rest of your pitching staff while I'm at it. I mean, at this point, you don't even have a proven closer. You could say how good the Cabrera and Gallegos have been in the last couple of years. And yeah, Gallegos did good when he was presented the opportunity late last year. But who says that Gallegos is going to relish in that role this year? Was your plan to throw Reyes at it after you probably busted all his confidence in that position last year? And they probably would have just went with, oh, it's a new manager, different situation. He has faith in Ali more than he had in Mike. Mike put him in some situation, the same old mumbo jumbo from Bowtie. And maybe the Cardinals, with the rosters they got, well, if everybody else is going to go in a transitional period, maybe we can too and still be tops in this division. But what's the point of that if you're going to be at top of the division? Why not go for it? Because it's not like these good players are getting signed to these little bitty contracts. There was a 3-year, $100 million contract in there somewhere. But Freeman at 6, Corey Seager with 10, 7-year contract for Semien, 6 years for Trevor Story. I mean, even though with all the opt-outs and stuff like that, you're not putting yourself in a good position for quality players in a few years. And the Cardinals are going to say the same thing every year. Well, we've had growth here in our homegrown players, and we got guys. I mean, in a few years, you're going to have people you've never heard of on this roster making $750, and it's going to be half the roster. And if the Cardinals are over 500, they're going to sit there and they're going to brag, homegrown talent. Or Brooks or Hagen are any good. You're going to hear, oh, look what we did in Japan, and we've been good in that market for a while now, and the same old crap. I mean, are we really saying that the Cardinals have been good in all them situations? I mean, it's hard to name one except for Holiday. Now, the trades, it always seems like the Cardinals find a way to do that. I mean, Matt McGuire's, the Matt Hollidays, the Woody Williams, the Jim Edmonds, Kitten Bottenfield trade. I mean, in the trade market, we've been great, but I don't think teams are just going to try to give up now. When you extend playoffs like this, not every team's going to give up. Definitely the teams that you were feeding off of. Definitely the teams like Cleveland, when they're in the smaller division in this Central with the Royals, and even though Detroit's trying to make a push. I mean, it's not like they're just going crazy with money. Tampa Bay, who's, used to be a low feeder, one of the feeder teams, ain't feeders to the ends of years now to replenish their talent, but they're still around. You're not going to see that Tampa Bay going try to not give up on players. Definitely in a 12-team playoff situation. Which, if you're trying to market yourself out for that, great. Homegrown, but the difference is the money you make off the fan base and the money they make off their fan base. That's the difference. And that's what I don't get. Is why is that enough money now? And you could say it's put here in analytics and replenishing the minor leagues and all that jazz. That's great. Good for you. But when you have an opportunity to win a division very easily and you don't take it, that just doesn't make sense to me. And I don't care who you are. I mean, speaking of Tampa, look last year when they traded for Nelson Cruz. Well, that's Tampa Bay doing that. And people just shaves off because it's been 20 years of winning and blah, blah, blah. That's essentially how it gets played off to us. And people accept it because because even when we're not, the best team, we're still putting $3 million in the seats. And same old. Look what you guys did for, showing up for this homegrown talent, and we're trying to build around and show you what we're trying to do as a ball club, and get out of here with that. This is something I'm not trying to hear anymore. Because you're not really protecting the best fans of baseball. If we're going to put $3 million in the seats and you're going to come out with this squad when you had a chance at 27 shortstops, and maybe not 27, but there was somebody who could play shortstop. Story, Baez. The Baez thing might be a little off. Might not wanted to play at St. Louis after the Chicago days. But still somebody you can look into. And then, like I said, Simeon, Seager, and Story. I mean, you had your pick of the litter. It was Detroit and Texas. Krager went to Minnesota. And I understand that these contracts are off the wall crazy, but you had the money to do this. And the other contracts, I probably don't want the $300 million contract. I probably don't want Corey Seager's contract. But man, it wouldn't be that desperate if I would be that mad if I had it. You essentially said, hey, if we get a playoff spot, we get a playoff spot. And that's fine with us. And it was Ncaa who really got the 3-year contract that I was talking about. It's only got a 3-year contract. I mean, $35 million is a little high for Ncaa. Because you could get that out of Paul Young. I can see that. But proven talent versus unproven talent. And, probably the excuses, well, we signed Paul Young to this little extension to buy off some of his years. We have to, and it's always something like that. We got to put faith in somebody. Why? That's not how major sports roll. Once somebody's out, someone's out, they're out. And a guy like Paul Young is not going to not find another job. I mean, if the Cardinals trade him somewhere and had to pay his contract, I could see it very easily being on a team like a Pittsburgh. Then it probably wouldn't be in our division. But a KC is a stepping stone to Bobby Witt Jr. And I'm sure he's just a guy. I'm sure that if he was going to get a starting job somewhere, I'm sure that he would be open to playing anywhere on the infield. And that's what I'm saying. Is you have all these. What if Tommy Edmonds not the player he was? And there you go with your little. You could switch him into Young out. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Where Trevor Story's going, how this didn't wind up happening. Definitely wouldn't the whole Arenado thing. And I'll get off the Trevor Story thing for a little bit because there was just more out there. I mean, you could have used a Kyle Schwarber. I mean, the Cubs went out and tried Drew Smiley, a Jorge Soler, a former 40 home run hitter. There was players out here for the taking. In a division that's for the taking. You're not fighting with the Philly in New York that's just going out and get everybody they can. You're not fighting that. You're fighting 4 teams basically in transition. You're fighting 3 teams in transition and the Pirates. And basically you're making it look like we're in transition. That's the way it feels like to me. And I don't know what's going on with Yachty not being in the camp right now, which, I mean, doesn't scare me none. Take your time. But you would hope he would be getting some work, definitely with Flaherty, getting some work in with the new staff, now that you're going to need them. A little scary that he's not there. Nice to see kids getting some time and playing pretty well offensively. And you're getting some shots. You're getting to see Herrera, who's kind of fallen off the face of the earth of prospects. But, the Cardinals love him, and he's going to be homegrown talent. So, when they need a catcher, and, every catcher in the world's out there, we'll have Andrew Knizner and Ivan Herrera, and then we'll have Yepes at DH, and Gorman at second, and have super utility Tommy. And we still got Paul. We still got Tyler and Dylan and Bader. Those are all our guys. Look at this. Look at what they're all halfway decent, and we're fighting for this 12-team playoff now. So we gotta fight too hard. We'll make the playoffs. And it's on paper we're gonna make the playoffs. Look at our team. And the whole thing. The look at a paper is great. You can go off 2021 stats. But when you expect to fall out from Wainwright? I mean, do you expect Miles Michaelis to have a 2.30 ERA a year? Or maybe somewhere in the middle of 2.30 at 4.5? What can you expect from Dakota Hudson? Steven Matz has been a guy that great contract for only getting him for $10 million a year, but he's not. It's not like it seems like every other season he's been off. And maybe they're looking at Lipitor. Maybe they're looking at Thompson. But they're not the guys that had, like, off-the-wall minor league stats last year. And it's a little different than the minor leagues. And Lipitor going off and pitching for Team USA in the middle pipe isn't going to help his stats too much. You're not getting as many AAA innings. But the more seasoned they are, the better. And it's not like there was a hole. Like, Sue was starting pitching out there. But you're basically at a point where you're at a reclamation project with basically any team. With any player, excuse me. But there was guys that go out there and get Gripke with the KC. I mean, it's just my brain hasn't logged ever. Not since Mizzou's been here. What he thinks about it. Like in the beginning, it seemed like he was on them. While jockey train, which hey, let's get some veterans, and we know what they're gonna do. The Matt Hollidays, the Mark McGuires, the Jim Edmonds of the world, Scott Rowlands. And we have this great pitching philosophy, which has worked for guys on the roster today, and what they hope are work for these KBO guys. But it's not the Dave Duncan. Dave Duncan's not the guy down there coaching. But we are going to have our Chris Carpenters, and we are going to have our Adam Wainwrights. And we are going to have our homegrown talent in Yachty and Pujols. And we're going to have to build some guys in. We're going to have some Rosendals and some Motts and some Linds. That's what it was. And it's not like that they were spending $230 million or even close to it. The Cardinals are going to be between 150 and 160. It's projected payroll for this year. That's not cutting. I mean, when you, in other sports, almost every team is spending to the cap. And the cap is not even a set cap that you can spend over. You can go over that. You're essentially 80, 90 million away. With money that we know you have. Because even if it ain't, and I bring this up every time, but even if it ain't baseball related, they got other business ventures that bring money in. Ballpark Village being one. One Cardinal Way, whatever they want to call it now. That gets the business because of the baseball team. So essentially, in the long run, you could even be costing yourself money at two businesses. With the Cardinals and with your little Ballpark Village thing going on. If you don't provide the quality entertainment. And it's about the only thing downtown now, so, you know, you'll probably still get that money. And sure, you'll probably get 3 million fans, because when you start sucking, you'll start selling them tickets for $10 a piece. I mean, that's just how it's going to work. Because I guess you could say that they probably think of it as throwaway money, but now they think, oh, we got to invest in young players now with this new arbitration bonus we got to put in. Or that we got to raise the minimum salary, you know, $150K or whatever it is, $130K. Because we can get to the playoffs. We know we can. And I kind of hope this is that year. And I don't want to say that. I don't want to say nothing bad with the Cardinals for every year. I hope they win, but I hope that somehow you see them fighting for the first place with a Chicago, a Milwaukee. I hope even Pittsburgh's up there. I hope they have to fight for it all year to prove a point. Like, hey, just because, you know, we might be spending the most money and we say we're making, we're not a big enough market. Well, we could have took this over. Look what we did, and wow, you know, the young kids on the Cubs and the Pirates and the Brewers, and it came around. Because the Brewers still got their pitching. And don't sleep on the Cubs pitching. And they, like I said, I named their whole basically their whole roster earlier. Now, if they have all off years, then you'll probably see a 100 loss Cubs team again. But what if they put it all together? Because you could still have all your big 30 home run guys, but if you ain't got no pitching, that ain't. What do you got? If you can't put a quality 5 starting pitcher out there, Wainwright's the only one going pitch. And that's how it was for a long time last year, where it was Wainwright. Wainwright was your guy. There's 2, 3 game, 4 game losing streaks, and here comes Wainwright. That's what you had for half the year. You're going to expect him to do it again? I mean, with all the injury concerns, and you get nobody. Definitely, and you really don't have the backups for an Arenado or a Goldschmidt right now. You have Lars Nootbaar. And I'm not trying to down Lars here, but just an unproven commodity. It just doesn't make any sense to me. When you guys got out there to prove to make your roster better, and you could still get a lot of these guys playing time. You didn't need a Corey Diggers. I'm sorry to say that, Johnny Mozeliak, but you didn't need a Corey Diggers. I would have much rather had a Kyle Schwarber. I would have much rather had. Very easy would have much rather had a Trevor Story. Because you still have open spots in this roster. At least one in DH. And I guess that's down to a Yepes, Dickerson, Nootbaar fight. I don't see Yepes getting in there because he's a right-handed batter. And you need something left-handed in this lineup. So that's the only disappointing thing. I don't think Yepes is going to get the shot that everybody thinks he's going to get. Because at that point, you got the 2 switch hitters in Tommy and Dylan. And you got Nootbaar on the bench as a left-hander, and I guess you could switch him in and out. And then you got Dickerson, too. It would be another left-hander, but then we're both 2 left-handed outfielders. So you probably want to try to have a guy that can play more positions than essentially first base and DH. So you're going to have a Sosa on the roster somewhere. And do you really, and then you're just running out of spots at that point. And I'm playing armchair GM here. And I don't know what Mozeliak has to do. I don't know what they're telling him he can and can't spend. But it's a long, long time since we spent big money on a free agent. Holiday has to be the last. I mean, the last one that was successful. And it's all because we spent money trying to spend money on the players that we brought up, and it's kind of after us a little bit. To where we had to go out and get an Arenado, even though we made a killing off his contract. But you had to go out and get a Goldschmidt. You had to make it look like you were at least making an effort. Because you were down to Carpenter at first base, and it just wasn't happening no more. And, and the shift kind of changes the whole thing for the left-handers, too. So you never know. Carpenter, with the shift not being on, you could see him get a new spark in Texas. And, I kind of think the Cardinals, you would think that with them being one of the lesser shifting teams in the teams in the league, to know the effects from that, and maybe saying, hey, well, if they don't shift no more, maybe that left-hander is good. And maybe that helps a Nootbaar. Maybe that helps a Corey Dickerson. I just rather not have a guy that's not proven and a guy that's fallen off in the last few years. I'd rather not have them and have a Trevor Story or have a Kyle Schwarber. Have a Jorge Soler. I'm down to just 1 hour Pujols. Just for nostalgia. I mean, that's the last thing, that's the only thing that can excite me at this point. Because they kind of took it all away from me. I'm excited that baseball's back. I had that funny feeling. I said it multiple times in the podcast. I think I skipped a couple podcasts because I didn't want to talk about it. And then it kept creeping on that day, so I felt like I had to talk about it. And I wish that my funny feelings like that would come into the card, but I just said, well, this is going to be the year. This is the year they have to, right? This is the year they have to go get somebody. They have a chance. They have a chance to run away with this and put a quality team on the field. You just think if you ran away and then you're resting guys down the stretch that need the rest there, now is your resting Story or Schwarber or whoever, somebody other than Corey goddamn Dickerson. And then you can see it when the rosters expand, where you can get out of a Yepis or Brendan Donovan, or Norm Gorman down the stretch to maybe make a roster moves like you did last year when you had Yepis on the bench for the one-game playoff. But now you have to do this in spring training because you have open spots on this roster. And I'm saying, and I said the Pujols thing was citing me out of nostalgia, and he's a right-handed batter that it's not the Albert Pujols that he used to be. It's going to be fun to see. That's about it. Maybe playing a little over a third of the games. At the most. Unless maybe a Goldschmidt gets injured. Then you could maybe see him get a little closer to the game. And that probably maybe with pitch hitting and all that. I mean, but with the DH, you're not going to see much of that. So like maybe half the games at the highest. He kind of be your glorified 25th man or 26th man at that point. But if you were going to do that in the first place, wouldn't you try to go out and get somebody? Because this Pujols is not going to cost you a bunch of money. A couple million a year, boom, bam, that's done. Fun to see him, Yachty, and Wainwright go out in the sunset together. I mean, whatever, great. Nostalgia. But it doesn't help you win baseball games. And maybe a little bit of nostalgia does help you get to that point where you're winning baseball games. But really, how many? 1, 2, 3 here, maybe at the beginning of the season, or maybe at the end of the season when you're fighting for a play. Now you're going to have to fight for a playoff spot because you didn't go out and get nobody. Then maybe down there, when you see Pujols and Wainwright fighting for it, then maybe it brings a little more nostalgia in them that way too. But you should never have to be at that point. One move would have pitched you 10 times the rest of a quality TH. Because if you love this new bar guy, then he's your fourth guy that can run out there and spell everybody. And then you got Sosa who can pretty much go out there and spell everybody, but Goldschmidt, and if you need to, hey, throw Yachty over there first couple games, get him out from behind the plate, give him, extra rest. Just one guy. At this point, I should have been begging for Trevor Story, but I wasn't begging for Carlos Correa. I wasn't begging for Corey Seager. I wasn't really begging for Trevor Story. This is something of quality, something of name. And your big thing is some pitcher in Japan and South Korea. That's great. Some guy nobody's ever heard of. I want to sign some other guys to some minor league deals that used to play in Detroit. If they can't make it on Detroit, there's kind of a problem there. Because they're not the best team in the world. And they're getting better. So you want to tell me a team that lost 100 games last year can go out there and make moves, and you made the playoffs last year and you can't? Definitely when you're getting this extra revenue from the playoffs and stuff now. I mean, revenue, and it's never spent. It hasn't been spent in a while in front of my face. And they want to use the excuse that they're using the baseball revenue to build up the city and blah, blah, blah. Great excuse and all. But the big product in your city is the one you put on the field. That's the one that's going to make everybody the most money. And you're putting a hit on that. And I still think the Cardinals win this division. It didn't have to where I have to think. I shouldn't have to say I think. Well, from what I see, on paper, I know that the Cardinals are win the division. On paper, look at the teams and look at what, if some of these young kids step up, if you get a quality season on McCutcheon in Brewerland, you could be fighting for this. The Reds, they don't have the worst team in the world. They still got some players. They still got Votto. They still got Jonathan India. They still got Mike Moustakas. They still got some young players, too, that if they ever stepped up, the team could be decent. I just think they just don't have enough pitching to be a good team. Definitely with trading away, your best relief pitcher to Garrett and probably your best starter, Sonny Gray. You can kind of see what trying to mode they're in. And they probably think, hey, if some of these players spark, we have a chance to make the playoffs. And that's the only thing. And what I don't get about all this of these teams that are in transition period like that. Now with the draft, with the lottery, you're not in the high greatest hits. Now maybe if you change it, you still got just as much chance as the second worst team, which it's like 14%, and then there's some 3 teams under that at 10%. Not the worst team wins the the NBA draft lottery every year. So now I can't even see why teams would even think about taking. Because I think you get a shot if you're in the top, 6, 7, whatever. And then I guess if you get to that point, you just start trading off players. And then it kind of loses the whole point of the competitive balance test because you didn't put a floor on it. Which is the thing I don't get in the CBA, which I said then essentially it creates a salary cap, which every team that's created a salary, every league that's created a salary cap created a floor. So why don't you use what is essentially your salary cap, even though you can go over it, but you can go over it in any sport. There's a hockey trade today where they had to wait till 5 o'clock to put the trade in because that's after the rosters went in. So that was the where it stopped calculating the rosters until it recalculated at 5 p.m. the next day. So after 5 p.m., I think it was the Flyers and the Florida Panthers had to put in a trade. After 5 o'clock, just for salary cap reasons. And this is nothing you have to worry about in the MLB. But if you're going to do a draft lottery, you should have put a floor on there to make every team at least go after it for a little bit. And it's not like the floor has to be hey, here's the floor. This is where you need to start the season at, and then do what you want from there. Because essentially that gets everybody paid faster, I would think, because now you're going to be waiting to the end, to where some guys' contracts they don't get signed to the middle of the year. Then they have to go down to the minors to get up. And then they have to come up here and they're going to make a minimum contract, which is going to be prorated. And essentially you sign a player for minimum cost that you could probably trade at any time and get all your money back for when you start sucking. You could literally pay your team to tank. And I think that's the only thing that hurts MLB. And I don't know, sooner or later you're probably going to have to talk about this with the Cardinals. Because it's not like it's going to get any better. If you're not putting yourself under any long-term contracts. You have your front office can't get along with Flaherty, so you're probably going to lose him at some point. And I understand you got Lipitor coming up, and you like Thompson too. And they got a guy like Jordan Walker coming up too, also. But that's what I'm saying. You're at a point where we're just not going to get people. That's where you're going to be. You're going to be the Pirates. And just because all these players were great in the minor leagues, when you put them in a situation where they have to succeed, a lot of that times, as you can see on teams like the Pirates that have the number 1 picks, you can see it was the Royals and their picks, except for Bobby Witt of late, but essentially any team with a first-round pick, except for the guys that are going to be stars, when they put them in position, it doesn't always bode well. There's not a lot of you don't hear every day about first round, the number one pick being one of the top guys in the league. You hear about him a lot. A former number one pick signed a minor league contract with the St. Louis Cardinals. That's usually, I feel like that's what you usually hear. So, I don't want to completely, because it's a quality roster from what you see on paper. It has a chance to win this division, but in a crappy division. I couldn't see this team going out west and now going out east and winning a division. You got to say that Atlanta could be fighting for third place in that league. The team that won the World Series last year could be fighting for third place in the NL East now, with the moves that the Mets have made over the last couple of years, and with the Lindor trades, and now getting Max Scherzer, and then Phillies with trying to build up what they built up with Max Scherzer, not getting another player in Schwarber, and trying to build some of their number one picks got up, but you still got Ryan Hoskins there. So I just feel like the Cardinals are we're kind of falling in the trap with them. Like, they're letting us fall in the trap, but we're falling right with them. Like, oh, but they've done good over 20 years. Well, they haven't won a World Series in a few. And I don't want to be like the big guy, but at least give us a job. At least give us, some hope. Because I haven't had the hope for the Cardinals to make the World Series in a few years. Last year, because they won 17 in a row, that wasn't my big hope. Was for them to be better than they are. They're losing a one-game wild card. I'm actually not surprised it happened. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to be right back. This is the GreaterStl Sports Podcast on the SG4L Media Network. Hello and welcome back to the GreaterStl Sports Podcast on the SG4L Media Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet the podcast at GSTLSP. You can tweet the network at SG4LMN1. You can find us on Instagram at GreaterSTLSP. And you can find us anywhere: Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Google Play. Anywhere you can find podcasts and all the video podcasts up at GreaterStl Sports Podcast. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about this tournament. Now, you could go with maybe thinking the ILLs are going to help every team, essentially. But it really doesn't prove to you why a team like St. Peter's beats a team like Kentucky. Or why any of these other Cinderella? Why you still got the Gonzagas around? Before it was the TCU's, Chicago's, the Wichita State Shockers. And it just seems like it's either good coaching or teams that just been around for a long time. And not been around for a long time, they've been together a long time. Now, you could see a team that has the chemistry that a team like St. Peter's would have. There's not many players from St. Peter's College going from St. Peter's College to the NBA. It's just not happening. But you can see how chemistry, a team that has some chemistry, that's played together for 4 years, can be a team that promotes a one and done like John Kyle Perry does at Kentucky. He did a whole 30 for 30 on one and dones. It's a good 30 for 30. And it can tell you how the game of basketball works. Look here, I can get you to the NBA, but come here and get your exposure first. And he did at Memphis, and he's moved to Kentucky. But now a lot of these teams can go that route because now a lot of these big guys they're just going to go to whatever school. Michael Porter Jr. that went to Missouri knew it was going to be a one and done. So you can see like the teams like the Arizonas and the Wisconsins, who I wasn't big on, but had played well in this tournament. Michigan, another one who isn't trapping up the big stars, but getting players to come there and play. Definitely for a guy with the name recognition of Juwan Howard. And even having a coach like a Phil Martelli backing him up. Like, it doesn't even seem weird anymore for a 15 to beat a 2. With the way it works. Because a lot of these guys aren't promoting themselves to be basketball players because what happens when you don't get drafted? They're promoting themselves to be stars in any way. The guy that you've seen, like I played for Kentucky, let's put him on the commercial. We know who that guy is. And I think that kind of hurts a basketball team like Kentucky, even though it's boded well for a team like you. But I think it hurts at Kentucky. To be promoting the one and done, and for guys not to go out there and maybe not have the NBA aspirations, knowing that, hey, at the best I'm gonna be a late first round pick. I might even get to start my first year, but if I can go sell myself somewhere, I'm gonna still keep making money. And this year, I just didn't really have faith in like the teams in the leagues that you thought would be like top leagues, like with the SEC and the Big Ten. I just didn't have a good feeling about the Big Ten. I watched Illinois play, and I like Kofi Cockburn, and I like the little squad they got going. But I just didn't think they were a team that was going to make it farther than they did. I mean, with all the teams, now if you go back to the 32-team games, if they didn't win their conference tournament, I don't know if Illinois makes it to a 32-team conference tournament. I mean, you see some of the teams that are winning out. St. Peter's doesn't make it. A Michigan State doesn't make it. Or, excuse me, a Michigan doesn't make it. So I just think there's more transparency. And someone was saying the other day that it's so easy to watch college basketball because it's so bad. And then someone went after him and said, where do you think the NBA players come from? I thought that was a pretty good comeback. I mean, you're always going to grow as a player. LeBron James wasn't a 30-point scorer when he first came in the league. Coming straight out of high school. He's evolved as a player. Same way with Kobe Bryant when he came out of high school. Michael Jordan wasn't when he became in North Carolina. He did it after time in the NBA. Even though he came out scorching. But I think in his first season he had almost 40-point games or close to it. Some crazy stat if you look at some of Michael Jordan's first year stats. But I think now in the NCAA tournaments with the one and dones and a lot of the NILs and it being easy to sell yourself, not everybody's focused on basketball at the bigger schools. So I think it's different at these littler schools when, hey, this is all I got. At St. Peter's, you know that these players, you know that you're not going to the NBA. So, I mean, this is my one shot. This is my time to shine. And like some of the other teams I was high on aren't really like, I mean, Memphis was a ninth seed, and I probably just liked them because their coach is Penny Hardaway. I had a slight little feeling on Michigan. Thought Tennessee was better because, like a team like Kentucky, who was blowing out people by 30, if you can remember a Mizzou and Kentucky game early in the season. I think they beat a team by 60, but I think it was like, Rider State or something like that, some made-up college. They just placed Kentucky to get a little bit of money. But you could see that they weren't the same team down the stretch. A team like Auburn, who was the number one team in the country at this point, I had no faith in them. And I think just the SEC just gets a lot of what they get because of name recognition and because of football. I mean, the worst team in the SEC this year was Alabama basketball. The worst. It's crazy. The best football team is the worst basketball team. And that's horrible to say because I watched Mizzou play. And, you know, the only bad thing about watching an NCAA tournament, and it's cool to watch, and it's got something to it. It's March Madness. You know, it gets you going. It just sucks that you don't have a team from out here. And I'm not going to be that guy that's going to sit here and badmouth Illinois. Great that they made it. I just thought they didn't have any shot. I mean, I think it's kind of cool to watch a team like Gonzaga go after Duke. And, you know, these top teams in the NCAA every year. I mean, that's kind of fun to see. It's kind of fun to see the Cylinder Wells. I kind of see like a team like Gonzaga doing it every year. But it's always fun to see something different. I mean, you see a team like Arkansas getting in there, which, you know, no faith in the SEC. That was the last team that I actually had the faith in everybody. And they kind of proved me wrong there. I mean, it's just that the SEC was at a bad point. Definitely with the Will Wade thing. At LSU, Tom Crean gets fired at Georgia. Florida loses their coach to Georgia. I mean, the SEC was kind of in a snowball coming into this tournament. And I just didn't like you know, you say Michigan in the same thing. But now they're playing for Juwan Howard. I mean, that's going to put a little bit of a monkey on your shoulder, and you're going to try to fight and get it off. And that's why you see a team like Michigan kind of creep in there. And that's what's the good thing that you see in life. It's a one and done. And you can kind of see the transparency and stuff like that from a 4-year college to the one and dones. And it shows in a tournament like this that chemistry can sometimes win out. And at this point, you're kind of just looking at maybe it's something like Duke. Get a chance, Coach Case last year. King Gonzaga get there again. You were kind of hoping maybe a Baylor Gonzaga thing, but Baylor ends up losing their game and losing a Sweet 16 streak. I mean, it's just fun to see. I think that just to see teams different, and you just wish it was one of your team. It'd have been nice for SLU to go over in the NIT and win a game. But without your two best players, what did you kind of expect from SLU? Yuri's not playing because of injury, and then you had Perkins out the whole year. I mean, what did you kind of expect? And it just sucks that you don't have that opportunity. Like some of these other teams that you could think would win. And, you know, that maybe Boise State has a chance. That a team like SLU would have if they would have stayed in the conference, if they would have maybe not be in the A-10. It wasn't big on the A-10 in this tournament. I wouldn't have been big on SLU in this tournament. Would I have probably picked a bracket with them winning? If I only have two brackets going, one on ESPN and one on CBS, I'd probably have one extra one and one extra one on both sides just to have SLU in there to win. I'm not that kind of fan with Illinois. I'm not that fan. I mean, it's hard enough to keep up on the teams that are around here, much less have to try to figure out the Illinois teams too. And I understand a lot of people are, they kind of want to be on why is St. Louis so down in Illinois and blah. Well, do you? I want to see my teams be good. I'm not going to hype your team all up because you're good. You're the only team around here. I'm good. I'll go try to vote for SLU being the 78th best team or whatever it was in the league. In the NCAA now. I'll go vote for that. I'd rather vote for that. I mean, it might look good on paper for an NIT title. Might bode well for the NIT finals coming to St. Louis. If a team like SLU would have showed out. See what kind of fan base they got going for kind of a postseason thing. And I'm sure there was a great fan base there. But when you're the guy that leads the NCAA and assists is out, and your top player's out, I mean, it's hard to win games against anybody. I mean, and SLU's the clear winner in the Missouri household basketball run for sure. But it's not like that you can go out there and say Missouri State was all bad. And then the funny thing is, you can go look at Mizzou, and I just want to compare the three big ratings. SLU and the BPI's 55 with a 93 strength schedule. Mizzou's 156 did have a 16th strength of schedule, and then Missouri State's 82nd BPI, 14th strength of schedule. And the RPI, SLU 53, 56 strength of schedule. Mizzou 160, 38 strength of schedule. RPI for Missouri State 103, 157. KenPom ranking, Mizzou 140, SLU 168. Missouri State actually beats SLU and runs a 67. Now, I'm not saying that Missouri State could have made a run if they would have won the MVC tournament or whatever. End up getting an 8 seed in the NIT and losing to a number 1 seed. Who, at that point, the highest they could have been is a 69 team in the country versus if you're an 8 seed, I don't even want to count that up. Got to be getting close to 100 at that point. And wouldn't it be nostalgic to kind of see in that tournament for if a Mizzou could have made it, a Mizzou having to go against a SLU, a Missouri State having to go against a SLU, having to go against a Mizzou? Wouldn't that be something to hype up, even though it is the 68th on down? I guess 68 to 32 would be 100, huh? So you're going from 68 down to 100. And essentially, it's an A-plus team. I mean, Missouri State still had 23 wins. Now, you say all that, and you would think, wow, Mizzou would go out here, and since they fired Cuonzo Martin, and if that's news to you, Missouri fired Cuonzo Martin, who was the head basketball coach, and then you hire Dennis Graves, Dennis Green. I don't want to know his name. I don't want to learn his name. I know he's 50-40 at Cleveland State. What do you think you would, in a team that's kind of has some not so decent runs with coaches, the Frank Hayes, the Mike Andersons, and I don't want to get in the Kim Anderson thing with you guys, with anybody, ever, because I will argue that one for the rest of my life of how dirty that Mizzou did Kim Anderson before they got to Cuonzo Martin. And if you want to go look it up, look at all the violations and stuff that came on from Frank Hayes to Kim Anderson with losing scholarships and postseason play and all that. Something that Kim Anderson didn't know he was walking into. So you can say, oh, well, you know, Kim Anderson did not know a thing he was walking into. And you just did him dirty. But when you want to think you would make a nostalgic hire, maybe go after a Frank Martin. Guy that you've been playing him against since the Big 12 days. Know what kind of coach he is. Know he puts it all on the line. Know he's going to tell you how it is. We don't need that here. Maybe a Kim English. He didn't have the greatest years of first-year coach of George Mason. But said to be a great recruiter. Said to have his fingerprints all over Tennessee's roster. Maybe a Blake Ahern, who's won a G League championship. One of the top assistants in Memphis. Supposedly reworked John Morant's whole career. Made John Morant do a star. You know, maybe something, you know, that would... You'd say, hey, that's a Missouri guy going to Missouri, blah, blah, blah. Maybe he didn't play for Missouri. But we had one in Kim English. I think the sleeper in that whole thing would have been John Sunval, who always gets mentioned, never seems to have a chance at the job. And even Travis, and I'll talk about this a little bit, because Travis Ford was in there too, about the SLU Missouri thing. But you hired Dennis Graves from Cleveland State. I mean, there was other coaches. I mean, there's Sean, I think it was Sean Martin went back to Xavier, or whatever his name is, Sean Miller. I mean, you even had, maybe not one of the greatest guys to go out there and get, but you had Tom Crane out there, who's had good runs. IU being one of them. You had a Bruce Weber out there who did it in Illinois, did it at Kansas State. Before that, pretty sure it was Kansas. Don't quote me on that one. That might have been the Bill Self years, went from Missouri to Kansas. Or excuse me, from Illinois to Kansas. But another guy that's established, that's known around here, that would bring some kind of swag to the hire. Maybe even look like where everybody was talking about. He was at Southern Illinois, excuse me. SIUE, probably. But, SIUE, Bruce Weber. Some guy did it twice here with the Salukis and with Illinois. And there's just more to add to that list. And we went and got Dennis Graves. Who? 50-40. That's not a much better record than Kansas had. And people want to say, oh, we need a name recognition coach. We need somebody that's been coaching, because look what happened with Ken Anderson. Well, you didn't get it. And Mizzou Twitter hasn't been as crazy as it usually is. But I don't think they're too happy with that, and that's why it hasn't been crazy. And I'm not on the message boards, and I'm not on the websites for Mizzou. I read what I can read from whatever I can get it from, Twitter, the newspaper, whatever. And that's how it is with, doing all that. So, but they're going to say I absolutely know who Dennis Graves is. I mean, I barely know where Cleveland State is. I barely knew there was a Cleveland State College. And I just read you all the numbers. And I probably should have got Cleveland State's, all their numbers on that. But do I want to? Do I really want to know? I mean, that's what this doesn't make any sense to me. It's the one time you did have a chance to go out and make something happen. Why do that? We'll get some coach that we think we can grow at Missouri, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that makes zero sense to me. And the people that, from Missouri, that didn't want Travis Ford. Now, I read you them stats. And I'll just read you the BPI. SLU 55, Missouri 156. You don't want that as your coach? You don't want to know a recruiter that's been a recruiter in this state that got Uri Collins to SLU? Been a head recruiter plus a good in-state recruiter. You don't want that at Mizzou? Nah. That's not good enough. He's only won 22 games at SLU while we were losing 22 games. We don't need that. I mean, you could have made a major hire here. And not even a major hire. But something to kind of put a name back in your program, definitely at least around the state, which is even a John Sunvold, with even just a one-year coach in Kim English, with the Blake and Hearn. And, maybe them guys didn't want the job. But it was kind of a fast little thing for them to come up with Dennis Graves and not hear about anything else. And it's almost like, I don't know what they wanted this in. I don't know what they want you, how you really want you to feel as a fan base. It's almost like the Cardinals. I really don't know how they want you to feel as am I just supposed to get excited about everything? Am I supposed to get excited about Mizzou football when you don't have a quarterback because you have the number one recruit and receiver and you don't have a quarterback? I'm supposed to get excited about that? I'm supposed to get excited about, Trevor Ward won more games than Dennis Graves this year. I can tell you that. That's one thing I can tell you. So I don't know, as a school, as a university, whatever, as a basketball team, as a football team, what do you want here? Are we just gonna? You just want? They hyped up Drinkerwitz, and he didn't. Well, he wasn't like the greatest thing in the world. Oh, anybody we get? And maybe this guy's great. Maybe he's great at recruiting, or maybe he can do whatever, get the players here, and maybe he's a great coach. But in the beginning, what I could see, I don't think that helps recruits. Because I'm going to guarantee that a lot of these recruits that are going to try to come to Mizzou, try to come to the SEC, don't know who Dennis Graves are. Don't know who Dennis Graves are. Don't know who Dennis Graves is. Because I didn't. And from what I'm reading on Mizzou Twitter, even the people that know people in the know, they didn't. I read a lot of stuff, and I didn't see Dennis Graves on the radar. Not that you've seen much on the radar, because it wasn't like this big old... You just see what people said on Twitter, who they'd like to have. I think to go after a young coach, a guy that had some experience in the NBA, won a G League championship, coach under Popovich, is coaching the NBA like now, I think that's your splash. I think Blake Hearn was the guy. No doubt about it. And maybe he didn't want to do it. But I don't even feel like the Mizzou put an effort into this. And that disappoints me. I really want them to do well. And I've hated them, and I try to hype them up whenever they played that game against Auburn. And when they did, it stretched it down towards the end, looked like a better team. But man, it just ain't it no more. This ain't your Norm Stewart, Quinn Snyder, Mizzou. And even Mike Anderson has some good years here. I mean, it's worse than Kim Anderson now. And you don't have all the violations and the scholarship taken away that a Kim Anderson had. That's not good. And Mizzou just passes it along like it never happened. You've never heard Mizzou apologize to Kim Anderson. Not once. No, all their ADs just left and went to other schools. One of them went to Baylor. I think they hired a guy who immediately went to Baylor. And Mac Rhodes. A lot of these people, when they got in these situations, they were like, we're leaving. And Kim Anderson at least stuck around and tried to make it work. And then just to get Michael Porter Jr., which ended up backfiring on you, you brought in Ncaa. Well, you got 3 games of Michael. About 8 minutes or so. That's about all you got out of Ncaa Martin. And I just don't know where you go with Mizzou at this point. I'm starting to think that they're down there talking to Mazalek and DeWitt and like, hey, how do we mess this up some more? How do we save this money? Oh, you hired Dennis Graves. Like we got Corey Dickerson. And what happens in 4 years when you try to start getting out of conference recruits and all that, and you start trying to get in your own thing? What happens when they have 4, 11, and 20 seasons? You're just going to have to find a new guy. At that point, Blake Hearn's probably a established head coach somewhere. You never know what Kim English, supposedly what he could do at recruiting, can turn George Mason into, or maybe get a higher end SEC job. Maybe go back to Tennessee. Does John Sunville past his point? Is it Travis Ford that done got SLU established? Are you gonna you've been the big bully? You've been the ones against SLU. You're gonna let SLU pass you up? You've been the ones against SLU. And essentially, SLU's passing up, and you don't want your coach? Nah. Look at Dennis Grave. His team was first in the Rising League. They lost in their tournament. They lost to Xavier in their NIT. They did the same thing as SLU, I guess. So we got somebody just as good. And they were first in their division. I don't know, maybe this works out for the best. Maybe this turns into something. Or maybe Dennis Graves is just your filler coach until you get the guy you want. But I think you had a shot to get a couple guys you wanted this year. So I just hope he turned out to be a guy. And I hope Travis Ford just goes out and just turns SLU into a powerhouse. And just stomps all over Mizzou. I was going to play around on Twitter earlier. Earlier in the week when everybody was, saying no Travis Ford, or last week or whatever, and say, what sports are better, SLU's or Mizzou's? And I think I was going to throw football in there just for fun. And people would have told me the SLU didn't have a football team, and I would have said, that's the joke, is they probably would have still have a better team than Mizzou. Because the basketball team is better. You don't think you could get a football team together? You don't think that maybe a loser Burnham might want to come play to SLU? Now, I think that the next thing that SLU should work on, and all these teams should work on, and hyping it up at Mizzou for some reason is beyond me. But I think with the sport growing right here, I think that, that they should invest in their club hockey teams. And I think Lindenwood said when they were going to Division I, they were going to. And bring up their hockey team to Division I. Which, another thing to watch, definitely in Missouri, when you see teams like the Michigans and all around here. And it's not just the Michigan. There's other, teams that you wouldn't think that might not be. Boston College has been a good hockey team. With how big it is around here in Missouri, you don't think you could get a nice little squad going at Lindenwood? Definitely, and have them in Division I? Just in NHL, Trent Frederick, Luke Kunin, Pat Maroon still, Chris Weidman, the Kachucks. And that's just, and that's not even a whole list. That's just from around this general area. So I think that SLU should maybe look at that and building up and say now we got the basketball and the hockey squad, that we're making a better effort than Mizzou. Now we're not going to have the football here, but we're going to put it into this basketball team and this hockey team, and we're going to grow these two sports around here because Mizzou hasn't done it. So I think that would be the next best thing I could think for SLU. And I think that if that really happens with Lindenwood, with their team moving up to D1 hockey, that could be a game changer for Lindenwood. I think it's a lot bigger game changer than just moving to D1 in general. If you could get the hockey team to D1 around here, I think it really could change some things. And I think it's kind of cool that, you're starting to see that maybe they are thinking about it. At least, hey, there needs to be a sport that we're seeing all these players go, and, they can't play college here. They're not going to stay around here. To keep them around here and have them all play together. That'd be kind of cool. You don't also see it on the AAA moves. Now you see them when they're doing it in college, too. It'll be funny, like, in a couple years when you go look at the BPI and URPI rankings, and Lindenwood is this, right there behind Missouri State and ahead of Missouri. That would be the day. That would be the day that makes me the most excited I've ever been about sports in my life. And I'm just not hating on this. I'm not trying to either. I'm about to hype up Mizzou. Because I'm about to tell you, if you have a kid, and it used to be a left-handed pitcher, because you were going to pitch forever. Now just go try to play quarterback. You have two guys in backups in Mizzou. And I probably could go around and look at all the other backups in the league. And I think Joe Flacco was still hanging around last year. So I'm sure his career earnings are way up there. But with the contracts they signed this year, Chase Daniel career earnings are going to be over $40 million. Blaine Gabbert are going to be over 25. Now, Blaine actually got his shot with the Jaguars. But you do got to feel a little bad about that Chase Daniel never got his shot. But if I could throw 261 career passes, I get involved in some of the games. At the beginning of his career, he did, when he was the holder. But, I keep myself involved in all that. And I make this little hot $2.5 million. If you're Gabbert, I sit and I get to learn behind Brady. And I'll probably never be what he is. But hey, if people, think I can run this offense and think I was behind Brady and I might have learned something, I got maybe another shot to play. But even if I don't, I've earned a cool $25 million from this. I've earned a couple years of $2 million just standing behind here watching one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league ever do it, and not having to worry about it. And I have fun with the Blaine Gabbert thing a lot. Like last year, I said I was going to quit watching the Super Bowl if I didn't see Blaine get in there. And I think I posted a tweet about, the new starter's Blaine when Tom Brady retired. And it'd be cool to see guys get. I'd rather, maybe not now at 35 years old, would I want to see Chase Daniel get his chance. But it'd be kind of cool to see, Chase Daniel actually get his one shot. And, it would only be cool because you never really seen a Missouri quarterback do that. Brad Smith, who probably was the only one that had a shot, ends up being a wide receiver. And a pretty decent one at that. Back for the Bills and Jets. And Blaine's getting up there at 32 years old, too. But you see these quarterbacks, with the contract, Russell Wilson's going to be, I think, 39 when his contract is over. These quarterbacks are getting paid now. Look, Aaron Rodgers, 4 more years onto his contract. And the going rate for a quarterback is about $45 million right now. For a starting quarterback in the league. That tells you how crazy the money is. So you just want to go look at your kid right now. I want to blow up my kid right now and say, learn how to throw a football. And I know that if you're not going to be tall, if you're 6 foot to 6'4", you're 6'5", you're probably not. It's hard to be a starting quarterback in the league. But hell, try anyways. If you can go make $2.5 million, a little less than that, $2.25 million, just go sit behind Drew Brees and Tom Brady. I'm all for it. Now, I being left-handed and I'm a little short of 6 foot. But I kind of feel like I wish I would have threw a football around more at this point. I'd be a commodity. I'd be a left-handed quarterback. Even though those don't always make, the last one you can really think of making it is probably, they had a real good, it's Michael Vick. But Michael Vick, the Mark Brunells. Of course, the main one's Steve Young. But hey, all hats off to Mizzou, what they provide at football, I guess, if you're going to provide two guys that have career earnings of hitting close to $70 million that are backup quarterbacks in the league. Hey, do what you do on football, I guess. I ain't try to work. You could think of Blaine Gabbert and Chase Daniel, but you can even go far down the line with Mizzou. The Marcus Goldens, you got Alex O in Denver. So there's some Mizzou representation out there. And football. When's the last time you actually remember seeing it in basketball? I can't think of the last time that even Mizzou, they talked about bringing a Mizzou player to camp. Other than, I guess, Michael Porter Jr., I just can't count that in my head. I just really can't. So it's kind of cool to see that they're still producing people in football. Now, some of you probably seen this story already, and I just kind of wanted to talk about it a little bit, and it's a lawsuit that has been brought in Washington, D.C. by a 24-year-old lady who's actually been on a reality show with her mom, and they said they lived off a trust fund, who said that her mom at the age of 1 signed a non-disclosure agreement with Jerry Jones, who basically said he was accepting and acknowledging that it was his kid, but of course he's married with other kids and didn't want his wife to know, or anybody to know. Now, she's 25 years old. Her mom got a lump sum. She got a few payment lump sums, and they also get paid every year. And, even said, they didn't say how they lived, but they said they lived off a trust fund on a reality show. Now, the effed up thing about this girl, she was getting receiving lump sums of money at the ages of 24, 26, and 28. So she just got one at 24, is about to get one when she turned 26. And now she wants to go out here and just wants to let everybody know that Jerry Jones is her daddy. Now, what are we doing this for? That's what I want to know. I can tell you what, the girls are, was just on a reality show, whatever it was, Big Stars Texas, Big Rich Texas, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it was called. You could tell this is just to get her name on it. And she said she was scared of the payments going to stop. Well, you done messed that up. You done broke a non-disclosure agreement. Why would he pay you? Yeah, you're my kid. You're 25 years old. Bye. I done paid for you. You and your mom signed an agreement that I paid for you and still paying for you to this day. You want to mess that up? For a little bit of fame? Because I'd be all over a reality show right now if I'm in a reality show. It's like, yeah, I live off a trust fund. Whose trust fund? Oh, it's my long-lost father's. Who's that? I don't know. Never told, don't care, I get paid. Now, I can understand that. There's a lot in there where they were basically saying that this other guy's his father. He denied custody of her. I don't know if there's ever a paternity test or anything like that. But he basically knew it wasn't his kid. So they tried to blame it on everybody else, but yet Jerry's still paid. And just to get you a little name recognition, you want to go put this man's whole life out there after you done got paid for all this. And maybe she's at a point in her life where the money don't matter. I can understand at a point where the money wouldn't matter. Because maybe you just want to know your real dad. But I don't think this is the way I go about it. I don't think after this lawsuit ends or whatever, and they dismiss it out of court, or, with another lump sum payment, but it'll probably be her last one. And maybe she can run around and say Jerry Jones is my dad. But you can run around and say Jerry Jones is my dad, and then say you want to lose an inheritance, that you're probably going to lose for saying it. I think I'm on the other side of that. Maybe it's because I know my dad. Just a joke, Dad. Love my dad. Joke. And I also don't know how much money she got. If I knew how much money she got, and it was in the few millions, and I was pretty much set for the rest of my life, and all I had to do was not say my dad's name. And why did she worry about this at 18? Because she wasn't a reality star at 18. She wasn't trying to make money off her name at 18. She got a little bigger recognition, and hey, wow, look, I'm Jerry Jones' daughter. This is what he did to me, and blah, blah, blah. And look, my name's out there. Now I can go get this. Now I can go sell my sob story to, the Lifetime Network or, OWN or whatever, whatever network you want to come up with. CBS, whatever. You have an interview with Gail Kim. Go look like R. Kelly. I just don't know if I would have wanted to lose that kind of money. Knowing the money that Jerry Jones had. Maybe I would have came in. She said in there that requests to talk to Jones have it fallen through, or no, people said he'd get back to him and he wouldn't, and this and that. So maybe, maybe she wants to know who her real dad is at 25. And maybe I just don't know if this. I mean, what do you think if he got sued in court? Like that would like deter him away from it a little bit more. Because it would deter me a little bit away from it a little bit more. And I guess if you have a whole life going and you're a millionaire and a billionaire, and probably not a billionaire back in the 80s, but a billionaire now, how you want to see something added to your, they could tarnish your reputation. Not that Jerry Jones has the greatest reputation in the world. Definitely with just paying off a lawsuit for one of his boys for workplace infractions. And he definitely doesn't have the best. He's not shining the best of light in St. Louis with what he did for Stan Kroenke and being part of his thing for the stadium and getting him to move the reins around St. Louis. So I guess he's already probably tarnished here just for that. But at the time when you're trying to build something, I mean, and you have a wife and kids and, you could lose like everything that you have at the time. And maybe his wife knows about it. Maybe we just don't know she does. I mean, who do we say how we know how his family structure works? So I almost think it's kind of hard to kind of say he's a bad guy for this. Because maybe he was at some at the time doing something better for his whole family. But still make sure these people were well off. Still made sure he provided financially to his daughter. So I can understand points of view. Hey, you want to know your dad and stuff like that. And maybe I'm just money hungry, or maybe I'm just conceited and would want to take that money very easily. And maybe, she thought that her life would be so horrible if maybe she had a father figure growing up or something like that. I'm completely lost and confused on the whole thing. Because I'm sure her mom dated after that. I'm sure with a little bit of money, there's plenty of guys stand up, lined up for her. And I didn't really go out and search these girls. But from the pictures that I seen, just on ESPN, I mean, either the mom or the daughter wasn't bad looking girl. So I'm not sure that she, I'm not saying that she had a line going up for her, but I'm not sure that she, didn't have her pick of choosing from the litter. So I don't think this girl had the worst life in the world, but for some girls it's something. I mean, most girls, a lot of girls want to grow up and be a daddy's girl. And maybe that's what she wanted and she never had that chance to. So I can kind of see how it's repressing. But how you're going about it, could it be the right way of going about it? And maybe this is the only way she's going about it. I don't know. I'm not involved. I'm going to take a break. This is the GreaterStl Sports Podcast and the SG4L Media Network. Hello and welcome back to the GreaterStl Sports Podcast on the all-new SG4L Media Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet the podcast at GSTLSP. You can tweet the network at SG4LMN1. You can find us on Instagram at GreaterSTLSP. You can find the video podcast at Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify, GreaterStl Sports Network. And you can find the audio podcast anywhere you can listen to podcasts at GreaterStl Sports Podcast. And I said network on that first one. GreaterStl Sports Podcast. Gonna mess that up from time to time. Now, one thing I'm never be friends with, never probably ever speak up on a positive note, and I'm gonna have to get a little more used to it now with the soccer team coming here. But hockey guy and soccer guy. Soccer guy, understand to a certain extent. They're just trying to defend the game of soccer. And, but, whatever you got to do. And hockey, guys, is crazy about hockey. Nothing else to it. It's no better sport. Do you? Always defending themselves, I feel like. Like, soccer's always defending the sport. Hockey guys always defending themselves. But, I mean, I did see something on Twitter earlier where it was talking about the Blues, and they had a jacked up dog. I'm going to guess something, playing into Louis or Barclay to, the dog, the Blues, foster animal. And it said, it showed a big buff dog. And it said the Blues spare the cap every year to make a team have a chance. And then, it said the Cardinals, do whatever the Cardinals do. And this is the one spot where hockey guy doesn't have to defend himself too much here. With what you see with the difference in the two teams. I mean, and this is the problem, but this is also the problem with hockey guy. It's always want. Now. And what people have to understand, there are points that we can have Mackenzie McCarron on this roster this year with money. Who's making $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 a year? Nothing crazy. Nothing off the wall major. But you weren't able to get him up until you hit kind of an injury crisis. Sundqvist is out. And it's also kind of at the right time. With the stretch you're hitting with, 70-something days you're hitting, almost 40 games. And the Blues have put themselves in a position where it's hard for them to do anything at the trade deadline. And that's no fault to the Blues. But you had to pay guys to be here. You had to pick over Pietrangelo or Parenka. You had to pay one of them. To get Krug come here, you had to pay him. To keep Falk here, you had to pay him. Tarasenko, your hot goalie at the time. I mean, this is what you had to do with the Blues. You put yourself in this position for the benefit of the fan. And it's not just the fan, but it benefits them. I mean, the Blues have talked about for years, how without the playoffs that they're always in the red. And I don't think you want to mortgage your future because you're going to trade for a guy that you're not going to have the money to have on this roster, so someone's going to have to pay. And usually that's going to cost you first-round draft picks. Definitely for some of the money of the players that are out there. I mean, the Blues just don't have $6 million laying around in cap space. They just don't have it. Unless you get rid of Tarasenko, or somebody like that, which I can't see anybody else rid of anybody else in this roster, except the one person that wanted to go, and I can't see you getting rid of Tarasenko at this point. I mean, there's nothing you can really do. You got to kind of do what they've been doing, which I applaud Craig Berube for. It's kind of having the fourth line rotation with Clauston, Logan Brown, Dakota Joshua, Nathan Walker, Mackenzie McCarron, and now Turpetenko. And actually, like, at times going with 11 offensive skaters and 7 defensemen. And letting a guy like Tarasenko rest, letting a guy like Thomas rest, given the breaks that Sundqvist needs being injured all season. See, the one problem with the Blues is you don't have that David Backes type anymore. And this ain't the defense to have this on. That's what was so great about Parenko in the beginning, is that he was an offensive-minded defenseman. Well, now this whole team is offensive is offensive minded. Like your real only, and Cruz up there with Bartuza, but the only one you kind of trust at this point is Bartuza. Scandella's more of a defensive guy, but I don't know if he's just now getting his, if he's trying to get, if he hasn't got his feet back under him yet. He's going to be rusty. He's been out for a while with injury. Understandable. But you don't have that David Backus. That was more of your a two-way guy. I think you're missing that from James Schwartz a little bit. I mean, how great would Vince Dunn look at a Blues jersey right now? But you couldn't afford him. You just couldn't afford him. What you had and what you were getting and what you were trying to attain, you just couldn't afford Vince Dunn. And that's at no fault of the Blues when you're spending to the salary cap. So I think everybody just needs to settle down on the Blues and just realize this is what you have as a hockey team. And it's a pretty good hockey team. I mean, I was already warning people about Husso before because he just didn't. It would seem like every other year, either he was good or he was bad. And the NHL is going to move that a little quicker. That progression is going to move a little faster when you hit the NHL. So it's not surprising to me that with how bad the defensive end is and it moving later in this season and he's still having to stand on his head all season, that maybe he's a little worn out. Maybe he's a little tired. Maybe he's not used to playing this high pressure situations. And maybe it's affecting his goalie play. I mean, you're just not playing good in front of him, though. I mean, I've been down on Michael ever since I started doing this podcast. And I tried to hype him back up last week. And it just didn't work out. I mean, he's just having a bad season. I just mentioned Scandella. Parenko's not having the best of seasons as a defensive guy. And you knew what you were getting with him. You knew that he was more an offensive guy. You were hoping that he could obtain that defensive game, and he hasn't quite obtained it yet. I mean, your best defensive guy is a guy that doesn't get talked about as much. It's just not hyped up as much. And that's Bertuzzo. I mean, this is what you got. You're just going to have to find a better way to play. You're going to have to, at this point with the Blues, what they've been doing with the fourth line, they probably need to start doing with their defense. Is they probably need to tell Scandella or Michael to get it together because we do got Wallman right here. And now they make a little bit of too much money to do that. But you're at a point where it's either, hey, play up to your standard, or we're going to find somebody else that's going to play up to ours. But the Blues at this point are just going to have to work it out. They're just going to have to be a team that's going to have to rest their big players down the stretch. They're going to have to get days off here and there. They're going to have to get a goaltender to get some kind of confidence going down the stretch. This is why I've been saying that you needed the two goaltenders the whole time. Because you see what Binnington did for a year and a half. And whoever knows, that might come back. It might not. You never know. Husso might pop back into his first half stretch. But I don't think there's anything that's out there that you can add to this team to make this team different. I mean, it's going to be hard to bring somebody in and have the same chemistry that you had before. It's going to be hard to trade away a first-round pick when you're a team that's already pushing the salary cap and you're adding a guy that might only be here for a year and might ruin this whole year. And then now you're ruining your future because now you're giving up picks for money because you don't have it. So I just think you're at a point where you're at a more, it's just time to settle down. I said it about the CBA and MLB. It's going to happen. Now I kind of went against myself on the last podcast, but I was still saying it was going to get done, and it got done. And when you look at the standings, I can understand people going crazy. You got Minnesota and Nashville only 1 point behind you. The Ducks only 3 or 4 points behind you. So I understand that you're in a stretch where this ain't like it's kind of scary for this to happen, and you see all these other teams making trades, but they're mortgaging their future on the Stanley Cup right now. When you have put yourself in a position where if you have a guy come around, if you have a Terpentico come around, if you have a Ken Clauston come around, if maybe one of these other guys come around, you never know with the Logan Brown. I kind of feel like he's like the Robert Bertuzzo, where they just didn't trust him. Like he showed flashes here and there. The Blues just felt like they couldn't trust him. And maybe they just want to see what they got in other players. Maybe they think they know what they got in Logan Brown. They know what he's gonna go out there and give them. He's gonna give them a good fourth line. But hey, let's see what these young guys can do if they, make an effort. And it's not like the fourth line is playing a whole bunch. I mean, and I was trying to think of guys that could be like that stopper that like the David Backes was that could help you get back on deep. And Bozak was my guy, but if you're only playing 10 to 15 minutes a game, can you make that big of a difference in a game? And you could maybe say that with Terpentico scoring his first goal the other night and only playing, 10 to 11 minutes. You still lost the game, but you could make a difference in the game in that time, but it's not the time that they're allowing goals with the fourth line out there. It's when Tarasenko's out there. It's when O'Reilly's out there now, a lot. And another thing is with the 3-on-3s, is that now you've got such offensive-minded defensemen. This way this team's 1-7 and 1-8 in overtimes. Because now you got a player going the wrong way, going to always be pushing towards his offensive blue line, and now someone's behind him. I'm pretty sure the only game the Blues won this year in overtime, and this might have been last year, I'm pretty sure it was this year, where they had a 3-on-0 to win the game. You better win that. But now they're letting other teams do it to them. And when you're putting young goaltenders in that situation, definitely one that hasn't proven himself a whole year yet, that's not going to go well for your team, no matter what happens. But I'm just not at the point where I think that the Blues have a chance to miss the playoffs. They have a chance to fall at top 3 spot. Maybe it comes down to where they're fighting for a wild card spot. But I just don't think the Blues are going to be in that position yet. I think they're doing it the right way, where it's kind of like, hey, we're probably not going to get anybody out of this roster. We're going to have to play around. Because with all these contracts coming up, we're still going to be pushing the cap, and sooner or later, we're going to have to get somebody that, when we don't have a Tarasenko anymore, somebody to replace him, and maybe that's a Jake Neighbors or a Clauston. Or somebody to replace a Kyrou because he has to replace a Tarasenko. And the Blues have done well with draft picks. I just can't see why everybody would want to mortgage your future on something that's not a proven entity. And I'm not saying that he's not proven as a player. I'm just saying it's not a proven entity that's going to make your team any better. And now you've lost something that could make your team better. And now you put yourself in a position where you're probably not going to be able to re-sign this guy. So now you've lost out on what could, be a guy in a couple years when you don't have a Tarasenko and you got these other guys coming up and trying to fill these other spots. Because some of the guys are getting older, the Braden Shins, the Tyler Bozaks of the world. So you're going to have the guys come fill those spots. You still have to have players to replace them. And the Blues have been trying it all season. They've done it from Logan Brown. I mentioned Jake Neighbors. He got, a 9-game stretch in the beginning of the season, which is usually what teams do to see let's see what he can do in that first 9 games. If he sticks here, he sticks here. If he don't, he knew what he was getting into. So do you want to lose that for something that could, break your team. Shake Neighbors is a talent that can make your team in a few years. And he's probably going to have to. Along with the Kyries of the world. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you're losing to try to win. I'd rather know I'm going to win than lose because I'm trying to win. And I think that's just the whole problem with I think people just want another Stanley Cup, and people want this and that, and it's great, but I don't think people look at all the situation. I mean, I don't want to mention him, but Mackenzie McCarron couldn't make the roster at the beginning of the season because he made too much money. And maybe that's not all of it. But I thought he was a pretty good player. I thought he deserved another shot. But the Blues didn't have the money to do it. Salary cap wise. Not that they didn't have $900,000 to pay him. Or whatever it is. They didn't have the clearance on the cap. I'm not going to put myself in a position in life to where I got something proven and I'm building a house and then I just decide to go build this other house. After I build my first house, I'm going to go try to build this other house that somewhere else. It's somewhere else where I don't know. And I don't know the resale value in this area. I just like how pretty the house looks. Or I want to build this great, wonderful house. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to be able to sell it. Why would I put myself in a position to mortgage my future when, by the way that I've gone about it so far, my future has gone pretty bright. I mean, Tarasenko, even though he was traded for, as the draft pick was traded for, it's a draft pick that netted you Tarasenko. Look what Kyrie's done for you. If you want to go at it, look what Parayko has been. Pietrangelo before him. The David Backuses of the world. That's what started this little run here, is the way the Blues drafted. It wasn't going out and getting all these big crazy free agents. Kind of like what you did with the James Neal and the Michael Pekkas of the world. I mean, them two guys are down, 36, 37, 38, 39-year-old players down there playing in first lines for the AHL Springfield Thunderbirds for the Blues. And that's what the Blues need. With the players that you got, with the Thomas and the guys, they just need them piece players. And the problem is some of these piece players are the same players. And I don't know what happened to Riley. I don't know if it's old age. It just seems like he's not the guy he was before. I don't know if he's trying to keep his body healthy. He's been not as great on the face-off as he led the league in 2019. And now he's not, or I think at least led the league in the Stanley Cup Finals and face-off wins. And he just seems like he's falling apart. And maybe because he's that one guy that's been out there the whole season. He's the guy that you can't give rest to. The guy, your captain. And of course, he's going to want to go out there and show everybody he's the guy. And he's going to want to play 82. But I think you're just going to have to find creative ways to make this team better. I mean, nobody's used to COVID. These players weren't used to getting a little break during that stretch for the Olympics. They're used to playing in the Olympics. Russ can set in pretty quick. I mean, definitely, I bet some of these players came back hurt from, you have your muscles going like that for so long, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks, you're sitting on your couch at home. So I'm sure that had a little bit to do with it. And they're going to be tired. I mean, you're playing in a stretch that you've never played before, with the games getting canceled at the beginning of the season and stuff like that. So you're going to have to find creative ways to help your players out. It's going to be trying to get a guy like Binnington some more confidence, maybe playing him against the worst teams, and maybe that's the days you play your whole lineup, and then maybe, you kind of have it for Husso here and there, if you think he's the better guy. Or maybe you do it for Bennington and try to build his confidence up against the bad teams. You have the bad team starting, and he has to play on his head, and he does it. It's not like he's been the worst goalie in the world either. I mean, this season started out with him as the goalie. Husso just played at top level. It's hard to take somebody else that's playing at top level. It's not maybe the brightest thing to do on a team that's fallen in a position to where they're fighting for a better, at least some home field advantage in the playoffs. Home ice advantage. And it's different in hockey than it is in baseball. And maybe a little less than, baseball's the lowest one. And then, home field advantage is, to me, in football and hockey and basketball, I think home court advantage is a bigger thing. And I think it's more spread on hockey. I just think the momentum of it, you could definitely see it in 2019 with the way the crowds were moving with the Blues, that the players were into it more. And I think it's a lot different now. You haven't in the last couple of years, you haven't had the crowds at full strength. COVID's kind of fallen out of the windwork, so you're probably going to have some crazy crowds down there. I mean, if you just get in the playoffs, if you got some home ice advantage, it could bode well for you. And I think the Blues need as much help as they can get. I just don't think this team was put together very constructively on defense. I just think they went after the best players they could get. Like, you knew that what the fuck was going to be the offensive guy. That they got him mainly for the power play. Because of what he did on the power play. I mean, you knew what you were getting. You were hoping that Parenko would kind of create more of a defensive side. And you could tell that it's kind of taken away from his offensive game. So you kind of knew what you were going to get. But you had to give these guys the money. Or you wouldn't be as good a team as you are. I mean, it's just impossible to beat. Like, I don't know if I would have gave the money to Torrey Krug over Vince Dunn, but Torrey Krug, from what I've seen, and winning Stanley Cup, sounded like a lot better name than Vince Dunn at the time, after losing Pietrangelo. Just think it's time to relax, people, and let them do their thing. They've been doing it for a while. I mean, it's been a while. But I can't remember really the last time this team was there. I mean, the mid-2000s? During the lockouts and stuff. I mean, I remember some pretty horrible years in there. And it was right after winning the President's Cup. But this ownership hasn't been like the other ownership. This ownership hasn't given up. I don't think they plan on it either. I think they're in it for the long haul. I think the other teams were in it to make some money. And when they weren't making money, it was time to get out. So I think that, I think as a fan, you just gotta let Doug Armstrong do what he does. Because if it's not this year, this team's gonna make sure that they have a chance next year. If this ain't the Stanley Cup year, and they think they have to go out and get somebody to make this team better, they will figure it out. I just think it's hard at a point right now when it's about giving up draft picks for whatever money it is. It's a lot different than trading a Paul DeYoung, because you've seen him falter the last 2 seasons. You haven't really got to see that in your lower tier players on this team. I mean, you've had a pretty good one with Kyrie. I mean, you've had not just him, but Kyrie, Tarasenko, Parenko, Pietrangelo. I mean, and the list goes on for a long time. Backus, Alexander Steen, or as Alexander Steen was a draft pick, it was basically a homegrown player. David Perron. I mean, this team hasn't been in the position it is because they've sucked at whatever they've done. They've been the best at it. They've won, Doug Armstrong's won GM of the Year awards. They won Executive of the Year awards because of what this team has done. And you can see it you can see when it happens when you get into these situations with a team like Chicago, and Colorado's going to find themselves with 1-7. Where Chicago had to pay Kane and Tays at the time, and now they're at the bottom of the division because they don't have the money for anybody else. They had to let go of guys like Duncan Keith. I mean, benefit for us, they had to let go of a guy like a Brandon Saad. I mean, that's just how I had to. I mean, that's a position they had to put themselves in to keep what they had at the time, a dynasty, going. And it's killed the whole squad, and then with everything else that has come up with the sexual assaults and on players of all things and stuff like that. They go on to the Blackhawks. I mean, they're just kind of a downtrodden team now. And look how smooth the Blues have ran since Tom Stillman has taken over. And you don't have this the only unnecessary even out thing was Tarasenko because he was mad over the way his injury was treated, which seems like funny about that with the Cardinals. Players always seem like they don't really like their training staff either. So I mean, I don't know if it's the same training staff. Who knows? But when you're winning, it's a little different. You haven't heard much from Tarasenko. You haven't heard much about it. You haven't heard much about Armstrong saying that we try to get rid of him. I mean, Seattle left him right there in the draft. So at the time, Tarasenko wasn't the hottest commodity in the world. And maybe they look in all season and see what they can get for him. I'm sure they're going to have to take some money on. And if they don't want to do that, he's under contract. And you're not losing nothing out of it. You're not losing draft picks. You already have him. You're not losing salary cap space. You're not trying to have to decide when you're going to have to rob Peter to pay Paul. Because he's under contract for 1 year, you don't lose draft picks out of it. You still get your draft picks, and when he's gone the next year, you have that money for whoever you want to go get. I mean, I just don't want to go around and trade first-round draft picks for a nobody. I mean, if we were talking like one of the Kachucks, a McKibben, one of the 14 guys in Toronto. No, something like that. A defenseman, though, when you haven't had the greatest success with defensemen, I just don't know if I would be real pressured to do that. I think it's just a time where you have to say, hey, you guys, we're going to go with Wallman here. He's going to be our guy. If you guys can't get it right. And that's what it has to be. You're still going to have to play around with this fourth line and probably do some 11 and 7s to try to get the guys rest that need rest to hit this home stretch. Because you do have a lot coming up. I mean, there's some games with Pittsburgh in there. You play a lot against the Wild. I mean, you have a couple games with the Canucks back-to-back. Canucks aren't a bad team. I mean, you get a couple of the lower guys in there. You get Arizona a couple times, which can bode well for anybody's schedule. But you're going to be facing a lot of teams that you're fighting for playoff spots for. And teams that are fighting, I mean, you got Boston coming up. You still got Anaheim. You're playing some games against Vegas and Colorado. I mean, you're going to have to find a way. And the Blues have been, and you can see, and Craig Berube and Doug Marshall, they've tried. I mean, how many guys have you seen on the fourth line? How many guys have you seen on this roster? Probably more than ever before. So I just think everybody needs to relax and just settle down. If it happens, it happens. If it don't, it don't. These are whole different times. I'm sure next year they'll figure this out to where we're not have to worry about COVID no more. And then you're going to see a more stretched out season. And you'll probably see, hopefully a different way that hockey's played. I just think the first thing you got to do is find your defensive player and protect your goalie and find out what goalie you're going to ride with. All right, that's going to do it. For my Grandma Hicks, love you, Grandma. For Lori Paul and Grandma Bowlesby, R.I.P. Love you guys. For Maddie, Jake, Zach, Rhiannon, and Joe. I'm Robert Bowlesby, and this is the GreaterStl Sports Podcast on the SG4L Media Network.